week, we have been sharing the story of the Scotland community and the efforts to bring this historic Potomac enclave back from the brink of extinction.
Descendants of newly freed African Americans once owned hundreds of acres of land. We wondered what restorative justice might look like when generations of families were robbed of their land and resources that would have changed their lives forever. Let's put this in perspective for you. Scotland families owned over 500 acres of land in the heart of Montgomery County's Potomac River Valley starting in 1880. But it was valuable. The county wanted it, investors wanted it. And families here, many who could not read or write, were swindled into giving up their land or selling it for pennies on the dollar. Over generations, powerful forces started to gobble up their once vast resources. Now that 500-plus acres is down to just 11 acres, and of that, Scotland families own just 3 acres. The reality of that today is this. Some of the very places where many people shop, live, play, and worship are stepping on the Scotland community. Land that would have been worth hundreds of millions of dollars or more. That is what happened here to the families of newly freed African Americans in Montgomery County.
Everyone had a dollar would come by and try to buy that land.
And when they couldn't do that, an effort to save Scotland morphed into a first-of-its-kind housing experiment where new townhomes would be built with federal aid, 75 available for rent and 25 left for ownership. It was heralded at the time as a model for the nation, but there was a catch.
When a family was bought out, and then they were allowed to purchase one of the 25 homes. The money that they received was only really enough to purchase the home.
Which meant there was nothing left to maintain the homes, and eventually the promise of what Scotland could have become was unfulfilled.
We've been here. We matter.
The church is the one constant. But how do you reconcile the past with the future of Scotland? With so much of their land removed, the very existence of this enclave is threatened. And what might restorative justice look like in the face of generations of injustice to the people in this historic community? Scotland AME Zion pastor Reverend Dr. Evelina Huggins has some thoughts.
If there's any community, not just Scotland, but any community in Montgomery County that's living below the poverty level, let's make sure they have housing. Let's make sure they have job opportunities. Let's make sure their schools are parallel with some of the other schools in the county so that all of our residents are getting the best services that the county has to give. Restorative justice says loudly, we can't build roads down the middle of certain communities because they're black or they're poor or they're underserved. We can't do those things. We've got to look at the big picture so that no one suffers based on development, based on financiers that come in.
It's about ensuring that communities that don't have the resources to fight for themselves have someone in a powerful position advocating for them.
Save our Scotland.
Today, modern matriarch and fifth-generation Letitia Gassaway Paul is now helping to carry the torch of Scotland, taking the baton toward its future.
So, as long as I have my God who's never failed me, from my generation, which is the 5th generation, to my children's generation, which is the 6th generation, we're going to stand and we're going to do and we're going to fight for Scotland because Scotland fought for us.
The center of the fight for Scotland has always been the church. The Second Century Project is helping to fund the efforts to keep it here for another century and beyond. That, combined with a Juneteenth celebration, which occurs in June, are both helping to raise funds for the church. So they need $10 million to flood-proof the landscape around the church and build a new worship space and a community center. The church has $6.2 million now, Zoe, thanks to a generous donation from Mitch and Emily Rails and other donors who believe in the future and the past of Scotland. They want it to thrive. We've got a QR code on the screen right now if you'd like to donate to this effort. We also have links to our other series. And so, you know, this continues on.
Yeah. I mean, they still have a long way to go in terms of raising that money. You've had
do.
these private donors that you mentioned, but what about the county? What are county leaders doing about this to right this wrong and secure Scotland's future?
You know, so it's a good question, and let's talk about that, because I talked with County Executive Mark Elrich and the Council President Andrew Friedson, and they both tell me that the county and state have put $1.3 million into Second Century and to efforts to repair the culvert where the water comes in and floods the church. We talked about that. The community center in the Scotland community already, named for Betty Thompson, who devoted her life in service to Scotland, was modernized back in 2009. You can see those solar panels there. The county turned it into a resiliency hub. And so if the community loses power or if there's some sort of emergency, this will become a safe space for families to turn for resources. But if you visit Scotland, you can see a clear difference between the 75 rented homes that have been updated and the 25 homes you see here now in what's called Doveland, which was named for the first founder of Scotland. These 25 homes also need updates, so there is talk about how the county can help the families there with those needs too. But the county president Friedson says that's a more complicated endeavor and one that will need some creative solutions, in part because of the different circumstances of the families that are living there now and the lack of programs in federal and state level programs that address the contours of all of those needs. Needless to say, though, as we've shown through this commitment to sharing the story of Scotland, we will continue to follow this Scotland journey and report back what we learn. And we've got some good news to report tonight at 11, but you're going to have to stay up for that. You're going to have to stay up for that.
But I'm glad we're having these conversations and progress is being made.
Progress is being made, and sometimes, you know, progress is slow.
Yeah.
But there is movement, and we'll be watching.
Great work. Yeah, you know we will.
Thanks.
We'll be right back.